11 thumbs up on this one. I mean, you guys, you add to your own delusion. There's nobody calling you on your crap. Nobody's calling you out. Wake up, people!
What?
Sable Chicken here, and I'm at DPRjones' comment section of his video about World Trade Center 7 and the conspiracy around that. And before I can address any of his questions, I feel the need to address this comment I saw in the comment section by TheRationalizer. Now, the name itself screams atheism, and atheists consider themselves to be rational. That belief that there is no God is a rational way of viewing the world, and therefore they view everything in a rational manner. Okay, now the Rationalizer leaves this comment. One thing that amuses me is that there is no reason to perform controlled demolition on these buildings. Yeah, because it's obvious they've already had controlled demolition performed on them. What he doesn't realize is that the other buildings surrounding Tower 1, 2, and Building 7 did need to have controlled demolition to finish taking them down. They were severely damaged, but they did not collapse like Tower 1, 2, and 7. 2 planes definitely crashed into these buildings. That is unquestionable. That is all you need. Okay, right there, this man's brain turned off, and he can't think outside the box. Okay, 2 planes definitely did go into the buildings, but no plane went into building number 7, and yet that fell like controlled demolition. But boop, his brain's already off. He doesn't need to know anymore. That's all he needs to know. Once these planes hit the buildings, it was absolutely certain that they would need to be demolished because they would be structurally unsafe. Yeah, they would. Now, if the planes went into the building and they didn't fall, that's what would have to happen. It's very convenient for the leaseholder of the building that the buildings did fall, you know, right in their footprints, because, you know, having asbestos-filled buildings, you know, they couldn't get permits to take those down in the middle of the city like that. You know, all that asbestos wouldn't happen. So, for what reason would someone rig 2 massive buildings with explosives in order to achieve the inevitable? Wow. Again, he's so stuck. 2 massive buildings. Hello, Building 7. 3. This is really disappointing every time I hear someone say how rational they are, and they cannot look beyond their little mindset.
We're putting out these puzzle pieces, you know. Molten metal at the bottom of the both towers and Building 7, and it's rusty when you look at the slide. The collapse of Building 7, straight down. The rapid collapse of Building 7. The fact that the fires were not hot enough, you know, we're trying to put these pieces together and figure it out. Here's another one of these puzzle pieces. In Building 7 was the CIA's undercover New York station. And also offices of the Department of Defense and FBI. Now, this is a high security building. It's not like you can have hijackers running in there. It's cordoned off on 9/11 and start planning explosives that day. No, or the towers either, of course. And this is a particularly high security building. Now, here's another puzzle piece, which I think will interest you. Down at the bottom here, I mentioned this briefly. The towers were old and loaded with asbestos. There was much discussion of how we're going to get this asbestos out of the towers or take the towers down. It was prohibitively expensive. The owner / leaseholder of these buildings insured these buildings, the World Trade Center buildings, against terrorist attack less than 2 months before 9/11. I'm not, sure, but he did receive an estimated over $4 billion in insurance payment. Now, the cleanup was out of our money, taxpayers. The building of these buildings, it looks like, will be largely funded by taxpayers' money. This guy's pocketed a fair piece of change. And I would ask a few questions, if I were in a position to do so. I am asking the questions. I just thought I'm not in a position to get the answers under oath. Okay, anyway, it takes weeks to plan. You should know that. Not a lot of explosives, 3,000 pounds per building, but it takes weeks to plan to bring a building down like this and to plant explosives to get a building to come down in this way. Who could pull it off with the CIA, FBI, and DOD in the highly secure building? So questions naturally arise whether this was an inside job. It doesn't look like the hijackers brought the buildings down. That's what I said in my original paper. And that's just science. I mean, it's just almost inescapable. I don't see any way out of it. Okay, the toxic dust is next. Immediately following the tragedy, scientists analyzed the dust samples. And I have some dust here that was given to me by a woman from her apartment in New York City. And it's loaded with asbestos, the dust, heavy metals, mercury in particular, from all the fluorescent lights in those buildings are loaded with mercury, and a very high alkalinity. Now let's see what that means. One of the scientists, Greg Swayze, says tests revealed the dust to be extremely alkaline, a pH of 12, and that some of it was as caustic as liquid drain cleaner. We were startled at the pH level we were finding. We knew it was caustic, but we were getting pH readings of 12 and higher. It was obvious that precautions had to be taken to protect the workers and people from this dust. Now, what happened? Here we see a report by Internal Inspector, EPA Inspector General Nikki Tinsley. Here's what happened. At the White House's direction, the EPA gave New Yorkers misleading assurances that there was no health risk from the debris-laden air after the World Trade Center collapse. As a scientist, to see politicians take perfectly good scientific data, this is very hazardous, toxic stuff, you've got precautions, and to flip that upside down and say it's safe, that is just wrong. It's unethical. And it is, I mean, I can't call it anything else but, okay, I'll use the scientific term, data falsification. Okay, that's the scientific term. So here's where they're saying it's safe. I'm quoting from the EPA press releases directly, and this is the ones that went out to the public, not the initial one that had cautionary warnings, but the ones that went to the public. And again, what was it? 5 times in 10 days after 9/11, saying this is safe. Our tests show that it is safe for New Yorkers to go back to work in New York financial district. And of course, they've been hit with a lawsuit for unnecessarily, people unnecessarily exposed to potentially hazardous levels of asbestos and other carcinogens and toxic substances. The lawsuit accuses the EPA of a shockingly deliberate indifference to human health. Again, that bothers me. I don't like it when they falsify data. I'm trying not to say lie. Okay, I'm trying to say data falsification.